Thank you all for coming to celebrate my daughter Brittany, the real hero of this family. My father's voice boomed through the speakers, distorting slightly as he tightened his grip around my stepsister's shoulder. Brittany beamed. Her chest puffed out beneath a Marine Corps uniform that was wrong in about 6 different ways. Then, Richard pointed a finger straight at me, sitting alone at table 12. Unlike Samantha here, he sneered, ensuring 200 wealthy guests turned to look. A disappointment who could not even be bothered to donate a single cent to her sister's charity. Useless. The room went dead silent. I could feel the weight of their stare, heavy with judgment and pity. I did not flinch. I did not cry. I did not look away. I just slid my phone out of my clutch and tapped the screen. There it was. The notification I had been waiting 2 hours for. Total donations received $50,200. That was the magic number. The threshold that turned a misdemeanor into a federal felony. I set my champagne glass down on the table with a soft clink. I smiled at my father. And then, I stood up. Before I show you exactly what happens when a fraudster tries to humiliate a Major General of the Inspector General's office, tell me in the comments, what would you do if your own father publicly disowned you to protect a criminal? I did not storm out of that ballroom. I did not run. I walked with the same measured pace I used when inspecting troops at Fort Bragg. The valet kid looked at me with pity as I approached my rental car. He probably thought I was fleeing the scene of my own humiliation. He was wrong. I was not retreating. I was reloading. I popped the trunk. There it was, hanging in a garment bag like a second skin I had been forced to shed for the sake of family peace. My dress blues. My name is Samantha Hart, and I am 34 years old. I did not get here by being anyone's daughter. I got here by surviving tours in places my father could not find on a map. I slipped the jacket on. The heavy wool settled onto my shoulders, familiar and grounding. I buttoned the high collar, feeling the stiff fabric press against my neck. I checked my reflection in the side mirror. 2 silver stars on each shoulder. The insignia of a Major General. Richard thought he had stripped me of my identity back there. He thought calling me a disappointment would break me. But he forgot that the army breaks you down only to build you back up into something bulletproof. I walked back to the entrance. The security guard moved to block me, took one look at the stars, and stepped aside so fast he nearly tripped. I pushed the double doors open. Brittany was still on stage, clutching the microphone, fake tears glistening in her eyes as she recounted a story about a deployment she had never been on. It was so cold in the desert, she sniffled. But we held the line. The sound of my heels striking the marble floor cut through her lies like a knife. Click, click, click. Heads turned. The whisper started at the back of the room and swept forward like a wave. Then, silence. Absolute, suffocating silence. Brittany froze mid-sentence. Her eyes locked onto my uniform, then drifted up to my shoulders. I saw the color drain from her face. She knew enough to know she was outranked, outclassed, and out of time. I did not stop until I was standing right in front of her on the riser. I did not yell. I did not need to. I reached out and plucked the microphone from her trembling hand. There are 3 things wrong with this picture, I said, my voice projecting clearly to the back of the room without a tremor. I pointed to the chest of her costume. 1. That Navy Cross is the 2nd highest military decoration for valor. You cannot buy it at a surplus store, and you certainly do not wear it on a uniform that has not seen a day of service. I pointed to her neck. 2. Your collar devices are upside down. A real Marine would rather die than walk out looking like a soup sandwich. I leaned in close, letting the microphone catch every syllable. And 3. You are currently standing in the presence of a Major General of the United States Army Inspector General's office. I let that sink in. The room gasped. I saw Richard's jaw drop, his face turning a violent shade of purple. Stolen valor is not a party trick, Brittany, I said, cold and low. It is an insult to every friend I have buried. I dropped the microphone. It hit the table with a deafening thud. I turned my back on them. I felt light. I felt clean. I had said my piece, corrected the record, and exposed the lie. I walked toward the exit, thinking it was over. I thought I had won. I did not know I was walking straight into a trap. I had not even taken 3 steps toward the double doors when the air in the room shifted from shocked silence to violent noise. Stop her! My father's scream tore through the ballroom, raw and desperate. Security, do not let her leave! I did not turn around. I did not speed up. I reached for the brass handle of the exit door, but before my fingers could graze the metal, the door slammed shut, blocked by a heavy hand. I looked up. A uniformed officer stood there, his chest heaving slightly, his hand resting ominously on his holster. He was not a hotel rent-a-cop. He was Savannah Police Department, working off-duty security for extra cash. And right now, he was not looking at a general. He was looking at a threat. Step back, ma'am, he barked. 3 more officers materialized from the sides, forming a tight semicircle around me. They were big, tense, and fueled by the adrenaline of a rich man's panic. Richard came running up behind them, his face slick with sweat, his eyes bulging. He did not look like a father anymore. He looked like a cornered animal, willing to bite anything to survive. "Arrest her!" he shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at my chest. "She is drunk. She is mentally unstable. She is impersonating an officer to terrorize my daughter." The lead officer's eyes narrowed. He looked at my uniform, then back at my father. "Sir, are you saying—" "I am saying she is crazy." Richard cut him off, spitting the words. "She was discharged for psychiatric issues years ago. She has a weapon in her car. She threatened to kill us all." It was a lie so bold, so reckless, that for a second, I almost admired the sheer audacity of it. He was weaponizing the police against me. He knew that in a high-stress situation, a badge usually listens to the man signing the checks. "Ma'am, put your hands where I can see them," the lead officer shouted, his hand gripping his taser. "I am a senior officer of the United States Army," I said, my voice calm, though my pulse hammered against my collar. "If you touch me, you are making a mistake that will end your career. Hands! Now!" They did not wait for compliance. 2 of them grabbed me, spinning me around and slamming me face first against the cold plaster wall. My cheekbone collided with the hard surface. My arm was wrenched behind my back, twisted up toward my shoulder blade, until the joint screamed. "Hold her, do not let her move." Richard was pacing behind us, panting like a dog. "Check her pockets, she is dangerous." Pressed against the wall, smelling the lemon polish of the venue and the stale sweat of the cop holding me down, I watched my father out of the corner of my eye. He was smiling. It was a small, terrified, vicious smile. He thought he had won. He thought he had broken me. He looked at me with pity, shaking his head. "You should have just stayed in your seat, Samantha. You should have just kept your mouth shut." He thought my silence earlier that evening had been fear. He thought I had stood by that table, swirling my water, taking his insults, because I was weak. He did not understand the math of retribution. If I had stormed the stage 2 hours ago, when Brittany had first started her little stolen valor routine, the donations in her basket would have totaled maybe $800. That is petty theft. A misdemeanor. A slap on the wrist. A fine. And Richard would have bailed her out before dessert was served. She would have cried, played the victim, and spun a story about confusion. So I waited. I stood there while he called me a disappointment. I stood there while the guests opened their checkbooks. I stood there while my grandmother emptied her savings account into Brittany's fraud fund. I was not cowering. I was calculating. I needed the number to climb. 10,000. 20,000. 40,000. I needed it to cross $50,000. That is the federal threshold. That is the magic line where petty fraud transforms into wire fraud and aggravated identity theft. That is the line where probation turns into a mandatory minimum sentence in a federal penitentiary. It was not patience. It was target acquisition. I let them dig the hole deep enough to bury themselves in, and I did not make a sound until I knew there was no way out. The officer shoved my face harder against the wall. "Stop resisting." I was not resisting. I was breathing. "Richard," I said, my voice muffled against the plaster but steady as steel. "You just made the last bad decision of your life." I did not struggle. I did not try to kick or scream. Physical resistance is what they expect from a crazy person. It is what justifies the taser. Instead, I went dead still. I locked eyes with the sergeant pinning my shoulder to the drywall. I did not look at him like a victim. I looked at him like a commanding officer reviewing a botched drill. "Sergeant," I said. My voice was not loud, but it had the razor-sharp edge of command that cuts through chaos. "You have one chance to walk away from this with your badge." He blinked, sweat dripping into his eye. "Shut up!" "My name is Major General Samantha Hart," I continued, enunciating every syllable. "I am the Deputy Inspector General of the United States Army. You are currently detaining a federal officer on the word of a man who is actively committing a Class C felony." The grip on my arm loosened by a fraction of an inch. Just a hesitation. But I felt it. "He is lying," Richard yelled, his voice cracking. "Do not listen to her. She is off her meds." "Check my pocket," I ordered the officer. "Left breast pocket. Military ID. Do it." The sergeant looked at me, then at Richard. The doubt was starting to bleed through his adrenaline. He saw the ribbons on my chest perfectly aligned to the millimeter. He saw the way I held myself, even pinned against a wall. Crazy people scream. They do not give tactical instructions. "Check it," I repeated. "But if you take it out, you better be ready to salute." The officer reached into my pocket with shaking fingers. He pulled out my CAC card. He held it up to the light. He saw the holographic chip. He saw the rank. He saw the expiration date that was 5 years in the future. The color drained from his face, faster than a recruit missing roll call. He let go of my arm like it was burning hot iron. He stepped back, his hand dropping from his holster to his side. "Ma'am," he stammered. I did not. "Secure the perimeter," I ordered, straightening my jacket with a sharp tug. "And get your hands off me." The dynamic in the room flipped in a heartbeat. The other officers sensed the shift. They lowered their batons. The guests were murmuring. Phones raised, recording the moment the crazy daughter turned into the highest-ranking person in the room. For 5 seconds, I had control. I had the truth. But Richard saw it too. He saw the officer backing down. He saw his narrative crumbling. And like a rat cornered in a basement, he did not surrender. He lunged for the nuclear option. He did not just double down, he reinvented reality. "She printed that ID online," Richard screamed, shoving his hand into his own jacket pocket. "I told you she is sick. I have the proof right here." He whipped out his phone, his fingers fumbling over the screen, desperate and manic. "You want to see who she really is? Look at this." He shoved the screen into the sergeant's face. "Look at the discharge papers," Richard howled. "Read it." "Discharged for paranoid schizophrenia. Violent tendencies. It is all right there. She is not a general, she is a patient." The sergeant looked at the phone. He squinted at the document on the screen. It looked official. It had a DoD seal. It had my name. It had a date from 3 years ago. It was a forgery. A high-quality, expensive forgery that Richard must have paid someone thousands to create, just in case I ever tried to stand up for myself. He had been carrying around a digital assassination of my character in his pocket, waiting for the moment to pull the trigger. The sergeant looked at the phone, then back at me. The fear in his eyes changed. It was not fear of authority anymore. It was fear of the unknown. "Ma'am," the officer said, his hand creeping back toward his taser. "Turn around. Now." "That document is a fake," I said, my voice icy. "Verify it. Call the base." "We will verify it at the station," the officer barked. "Cuff her." I felt the cold steel snap around my wrists. The click echoed through the silent ballroom. Richard laughed like he had already won. Brittany hid her smirk behind a manicured hand. They believed I was finished, cuffed, disgraced, and alone. The sergeant gripped my arm to haul me out when the ballroom doors blew open. 6 agents in charcoal suits stormed in. Badges raised. "Federal agents! Nobody move!" Music died. Guests froze. The local cops nearly jumped out of their skin. Special Agent Miller pushed straight through the terrified crowd and saluted me. "Ma'am. Apologies for the delay. We were waiting on the wire transfer." The sergeant paled. My handcuffs snapped off. I stood tall again. The warrant was real. My authority was real. And the fraud was theirs. I walked to Brittany, who suddenly looked like a child hiding inside a stolen uniform. "It was just a joke," she whimpered. "Wire fraud is not a joke," I said. "And the Stolen Valor Act is federal." Miller cuffed her, reading charges. Wire fraud. Identity theft. Charity fraud. "Dad," she shrieked. "Help me." Richard stepped back just out of reach, palms raised, abandoning her in real time. "I didn't know," he said loudly. "She lied to me too. I'm a victim." Classic narcissist survival instinct. The moment someone stops reflecting greatness, they become disposable. I showed him the forged psychiatric discharge on his phone. "If you knew nothing, why did you prepare this?" His face collapsed. "Obstruction, false reporting, conspiracy," I said. 2 agents slammed him against a table. "I'm your father," he screamed. "Not anymore," I replied. "You're a precedent." The ballroom parted as father and daughter were dragged out, not one person lifting a finger to save them. Outside, I peeled off my dress jacket like armor I no longer needed. The war was over. I called the only person who mattered. "It's done, Grandma. The accounts are frozen. Your money is safe." She exhaled relief. I promised to bring her home with me. Driving away, I didn't feel joy, just peace. Here's the lesson. Do not beg to belong to people determined to misunderstand you. Build your own table. Do the work quietly. And let truth be the last voice in the room.